Everyone, welcome to the Alpha Drop. I'm Rachel Buchanan.
And I'm Jackie Roach, and we are creating conscious conversations.
And today we have a special guest for you. My amazing big brother, Curtis Chappell, is here to chat with us about all things blockchain.
When Rachel and I met, one of the first things she said to me when she found out I was into blockchain and crypto and that kind of, she was like, "Oh my God, you have to meet my brother." And lo and behold, we had a Zoom meeting. And I mean, not only was he just a cool, interesting person, he is so clearly just a deep thinker, a big picture person. I mean, talk about seeing the future and bringing it to yourself now to come forward in the best light. And he's such a conscious person as well. And I mean, you didn't grow up together, actually.
I know. Yeah. Fun fact. Curtis is 16 years older than I am. And, I think as soon as my mom gave birth to me, he was like, "Yeah, baby, I'm out." So he moved out and we've never had a fight. I just think that's a little interesting tidbit.
Curtis is just an important person all around. What he's doing in the space is amazing. I love it. I love where this ride is going. And we hope you guys enjoy it just as much as we are.
Welcome to the show.
So welcome, Curtis. It's been really such a pleasure meeting you through Rachel. It blows my mind how much stuff intersects that, you've been doing in your field. You are an absolute natural teacher. Your books you've written 3 books, and I just want to devour all of them. I'm totally impressed with reading between the lines. It's so cool. You work in search engine optimization. So really language is so important in all of that. Even just approaching writing a book, what would motivate you to choose such a difficult subject to begin with? And then what was that process really like?
Well, interesting. First off, thanks for having me, ladies. It's a pleasure to be with you today. In preparing for this presentation, or this discussion, I thought back through the whole process. And what happened was I went back home for Rachel's wedding. And I had been out of the country living in Australia for about 5 years. And I went for a walk in the park with my dear cousin, who is a little bit older than Rachel, in between our age. And she was having a really tough time in her life. And I was trying, and you might recall, this is when The Secret had come out and was such a blockbuster, right? And this whole concept of manifesting your own reality and creating your own reality. And I was trying to share this concept with her. And I just came up with the term, when it rains, it pours, right? So, when people use that term, traditionally, there's a lot of bad things happening in a short amount of time. Traditionally is used to describe a negative scenario. And it really helped me get this concept across to her of we create our own reality. So, the concept is if you have a lot of bad things happening in your life again and again and again, that's probably because a bad thing happens and then you expect another bad thing and you expect another bad thing and you start manifesting your own reality, right? And on the other side, it's a good thing. So, maybe, you're out trying to find a date and you get, instead of meeting one person, all of a sudden you meet 4, and it's like just raining is pouring, right? And so it was on the flight back from that time in Florida that the concept for the book hit me. And I thought, wow, there's a lot of famous, well-known sayings that I think have esoteric, hidden meaning in them. And that was where the idea from the book came from. And then it was just 3 years of meditating and contemplating and rewriting. And after 4 rewrites, I basically self-published it. And it was quite an experience. It was a lot of work.
And you were already into SEO at that point?
Yes. So I had started my own company in 2009, but I had been doing SEO as part of my job for about 5 years prior to that. So I've got about close to 20 years experience doing PPC, which is pay-per-click advertising, and then straight up SEO, search engine optimization.
Yes. And then was there any relationship to you, when you're writing this book about adages and words and these hidden meanings and that, and then SEO being literally what you're putting into this computer to search is important, how you identify things and label them?
Yeah, it's a good question, but to be honest, they're exactly opposite. When you're writing a book, well, it depends on the kind of book you're writing, obviously, but you're a slave to your own creativity, right? So you can kind of do whatever you want. When you're doing SEO and specifically writing for Google, all of a sudden your creativity kind of gets sucked out away from you, because you have to format the content such that the search engine likes what it's seeing. And that's especially if you want to rank, on page 1 for that content. So one's super creative and one's almost scientific, because there's very specific things that Google's looking for, as we understand their algorithm from my testing anyway, because Google doesn't actually tell us what they're looking for. They just have this algorithm with 400 changes a year, and you just have to do your best to be an SEO guru and try to jump through the hoops. But ultimately, what Google wants is good quality stuff. But again, they're looking for it to be formatted in a very specific way. So it kind of removes some of the creativity, if you will.
And then just jumping back really quickly, you were saying, talking about The Secret coming out and expectations and manifesting things. And it was really interesting to me. My background was working in the newspaper industry, and I started there when I was 21, and it was already doom and gloom. The internet had already hit the scene, and everybody was getting their, readers were switching to digital media. And we're finding ourselves in this point now. And I remember I was getting my MBA in supply chain, and I was learning about blockchain, and I was still working at the newspaper. And I was like, oh my gosh, we haven't even dealt with the internet, like the disruption of the internet yet. And here comes this new thing rolling in. So, this is really going to affect a lot of industries. And maybe you could just speak a little bit to the disruptive power of blockchain, and maybe in relationship to the internet, it makes it a little bit more tangible.
Well, again, it's been interesting, my career and flow through this. So in 1998, while I was in university, I was working at America Online. And this was when, I don't know if you guys remember, but they were sending out the discs. You get discs in your mail every week, and, they would get you signed up. And a lot of people thought that America Online was the internet. And, I was working in the call center and tech support. And what was really interesting is, this attracted the freaks of the freaks, right? I mean, we had these freaky developers. There were people that thought they were vampires. There were people walking around in clown costumes. There were people walking around in a robe and slippers, I even had a little clay gargoyle up on top of my monitor. I mean, we were all just kind of out there. And this was the bleeding edge of getting the internet out there. And I was actually going to school for a degree in banking and finance. And even though it was a job, I saw what was happening, but I didn't see what was happening. I knew it was going to change the world, but I was so caught up in getting this degree that I didn't think about stopping what I was doing and sitting and staying in that industry. And to be honest, if I had just sat there at AOL and become a team leader, I wouldn't be on this conversation with you two today, because I'd be retired from my AOL stock. So this is what's happening with the blockchain right now. And this is why I'm so excited about it, because I missed that boat. I missed that wave. And there's a new wave coming, and it's blockchain, and it's automation. And it's going to have a huge impact on the world. And whether you look at it from a macroeconomic perspective or on an individual basis, it's coming, and people are either going to be ready for it or not. And those people who are ready for it ahead of time are going to be in a much better situation when it becomes more invasive in our life, in our everyday experience.
And what are the industries, just off the top here, which ones do you see affected the most, or what type of workers should be really looking out for this?
I think one of the first areas that's going to be absolutely smashed is the mid-level accounting profession. And I don't mean like accountants. I mean, like if you're in accounting for a business, a lot of businesses, as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more and more of their accounting budget is invested in what's called reconciliation. And reconciliation is basically just effectively making sure that what this human put in and this human put in matches on the two sides. So you're really trying to capture human error. And there's a concept in blockchain called smart contracts. And even though they're not what they sound like they are, they're not smart, and they're not legally contracts, but they're basically if-then logic, which makes stuff happen automatically. And that if-then logic can be programmed to make sure that there are no errors with regards to inputting data. And so that's going to be an area that's going to be impacted dramatically, I think, in the short term. And then another area that I'm really excited about is the whole supply chain industry. And I can give you some examples of where that's being applied now, and the effects that has had in real world scenarios.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear what you think about like transparency in the supply chain and, giving the power back to the individual farmers. I know I've worked with companies that have had quite large supply chains, and lots of things came up, primarily this transparency concern or issue, and, testing as well. And wanting to make sure that there's like ethics involved, and wanting to make sure that there's traceability that is able to, be somewhat quick. I actually heard of like these companies that are these personal care products that we all know and have used at some point, that you can buy in every grocery store, department store. They are so big that they actually can't track. They don't know where this stuff is coming from. There is no supply chain that has any sort of traceability and trackability, and therefore transparency in the brand. And therefore, if there was an issue, like with a third party testing, they wouldn't be able to track it back and recall a product. So can you explain kind of like how blockchain would be able to assist in the transparency and giving power back to the farmers and traceability, trackability, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of examples. One's quite short, and it's it should be near and dear to everyone's heart, because it's good old Walmart in America, which is one of the largest retailers there. And they had this is something I just saw recently. They had somehow there was a recall for romaine lettuce. I guess there was some tainted romaine lettuce, and it had been resold through Walmarts all over the country, and they had to do a recall. And when they actually went into their existing supply chain system to try to determine what farm did this tainted lettuce come, or what distributor, where did it get tainted and where did it come from, it took them up to 6 days to be able to determine that information. And they obviously felt that wasn't good enough, because it just wasn't safe for Joe Public, to have the lettuce on the shelves for 6 days. And basically they had to take all the lettuce down immediately. So they had a huge loss because they just couldn't track it in time. And so they implemented a blockchain solution to track their supply chain. And once that was done, they did a reverse test, and they could find a tainted bin of lettuce in 2.5 seconds. So you're talking about immediate access to data and transparency if it's put into a blockchain. Another story, which I think is a really warm, fuzzy, feel-good story, and it has to do with cocoa beans. And for those of you who are chocolate lovers, chocolate comes from cocoa beans. And this was a project that was done out of Australia as well, which I find interesting. But there were cocoa beans grow in interesting parts of the world that are often very remote. And so you're talking about like the mountains of Papua New Guinea and the mountains of South America and Central America. So it's just the nature of the plant. That's where they produce the best, most highest quality beans. This project went and looked at the cocoa farmers in Papua New Guinea. Basically, the process was very much handwritten. So, the farmer would take the beans, and then a middleman would come along and buy the beans off of them, and they'd write that down on a little, receipt. And, the farmer had no access to data. Sure, they might have a mobile phone in the city, but up in the mountains, there's just no coverage. So there's no instant access to data. And so basically the farmers, as you went through the process, the farmers were getting ripped off. Everyone was taking a little piece and stealing a couple beans all the way, through. And there's 4 or 5 processes that the beans have to go through before they actually get to the manufacturer. And so every step of the way, someone was taking a clip. And they just did a really simple blockchain-based app, or called a DApp in our space, that lived on a mobile device. And you could connect via Bluetooth, so you didn't have to have connectivity. You just had to have closeness between the 2 devices. And they gave one to the farmer and one to the middleman, and then one to all the people along the way, and obviously to the manufacturer. And what happened, without going through all of the technical aspects, is the results of being able to track that every step of the way and making sure the farmer wasn't getting ripped off. The farmers, on average, saw like a 400% increase in their revenues. That's life-changing for those people. And some of those people went and bought more land and grew more trees. Some people expanded and like bought the equipment that's required to do the next process. And then, so obviously they encapsulated, and from their perspective, it just gave them more access and visibility to their revenues. But think about the chocolate manufacturer as well. All of a sudden, the chocolate manufacturer could track every load of chocolate all the way back to every individual farmer. So if they started to realize, wow, the beans coming from this farmer, are much better and bigger and richer or juicier or whatever, makes better chocolate, they could then start steering their purchasing back towards the farmers that were providing better product, and then buying less from those farmers who were maybe doing dodgy stuff and not doing the right thing, or just for whatever reason the land that their trees were on just doesn't produce the highest level quality chocolate. So it's kind of an end-to-end solution. Now that provides visibility, and that chain was actually done in what we call a private chain. So in a private blockchain, you have specific users that have specific rights and specific access to specific data, right? And if you look at the inverse of that, or the converse of that, is something like Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a public blockchain, and basically everybody can see everything. And so it's quite different in how you would use and implement those. But both of them offer the same, what we call immutability, which is the data can't be changed. And then obviously visibility. And it just depends on, again, whether you have a public blockchain with full rights to everything, or a private blockchain with permission rights to access that data. So hopefully those are a couple of examples that help you understand how it's being used in the real world today.
I think it's so important as we see the rise of just people really voting with their dollars, and companies are listening by responding with entire organizations that provide, products that are fair trade and guaranteed to not have child labor. And just gets into this like big global trade kind of conversation. And I think it's going to be more important and relevant even moving forward, having a solution that can help with these problems that people are already waking up to as something that they want to invest their own money just as a consumer.
Well, certainly from the consumer side, and we talk about like being able to track, here's another example. Cardano put out a solution. They did a project with New Balance shoes. So, these brands, these luxury brands that, someone like New Balance shoes spends millions and millions and millions of dollars a year chasing down fake shoes. So companies like Gucci, you got all this fake stuff that's being created, in China and all over the world. So how do we guarantee that what we're buying is a real Gucci or a real New Balance shoe? And Cardano did this with New Balance, and basically the proper shoes were sent out with a little card with a QR code. And then they had a DApp that lived on your phone. And when you bought the shoes, you scanned it on your phone and it said, yes, that this is a guaranteed correct pair of New Balance shoes. And New Balance was able to charge $15 more per pair because it guaranteed to the end user that it was a real proper pair of shoes. But if we go to the other side of things, and kind of the bigger money side of things, there was another project that IBM did with Maersk. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's one of the largest shipping companies in the world. You did Maersk. You might see that name on containers all over the world. And they simply had a situation where they had a big supply chain where they're moving lots of data and lots of information. And if you wanted to be a part of that blockchain, you had to get a letter of credit. And it took on average 45 days to get a letter of credit approved. And they implemented a blockchain solution, and they brought that down to 17 days. So again, there's big companies that are looking at these solutions, and think about the cost savings that an organization would have by cutting process times in half. And then also think about revenue generation. So the people who want to start building revenues can start generating revenues with waiting less than half the time to actually get started. So it works both ways. So it's consumer driven, but it's also being driven by big business as well.
And I think what's so interesting from my standpoint is, for someone that was in procurement and inventory and supply chain, I remember wasting entire days trying to track things down, trying to, get a hold of the vendors and figure out like where things went wrong. And just to piggyback on one of the points you made earlier, recently data has become a more expensive commodity or more valuable commodity than oil. So,
Absolutely.
When you're talking about leveling, this is where my heart just goes is, talking about those cocoa bean farmers. The fact that they have access to their own data, that they can see what they do is so powerful. And then you take that to the consumer side, that consumers can see there was no human being in between recording this and getting it to you. And I just think that's so powerful moving forward.
Well, it's ironic about this is truly the irony of ironies. I couldn't believe this. This is where this kind of crazy alignment starts coming into place, and you start questioning, how does all this work? Anyway, I was asked recently to explain the blockchain to a 65-year-old retired businessman. So very smart guy. but didn't know what this stuff was. And you know, one of the things I learned from going through the advanced diploma is you have to tell stories as to get through that. So basically, as you go through the advanced diploma, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but it was a training course, accredited training course, and one of the requirements was that you actually had to tell the story. You had to, you know, come up with a story to kind of help people understand. So it's not just technical; there's really human stuff around it. Anyway, I was telling him the story about the cocoa beans. I could not believe it. The guy turns around and says, "Yeah, I used to live in Papua New Guinea, and I grew coffee and I grew cocoa beans." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I used to lose 45% of my crop." And I'm like, "What?" And he was like, "You know, I can see this." And I was like, "Oh my God. I mean, how crazy is that I'm using a story from a guy who actually did it and experienced it and saw it, lived it." And I'm like, wow, that's just kind of crazy. You know, when those things start happening, I think I'm in alignment, put it that way.
It's almost as crazy as me meeting your sister in a meditation course and finding out that you're literally the mentor of my dreams. And this person, you know, I've had this, you know, knowing of blockchain and know where to go with it. It's just so cool. People taking charge and being a part of the solution too. You know, it's coming. And we talked a lot about this, Rachel and I, you know, you're going to be fearful or you're going to just take some control and start taking the actions that are going to move you forward.
Absolutely. So there's a term, a fancy term we use in blockchain called disintermediation. Disintermediation is the removal of redundant processes and or people. So I decided when I learned about that concept that I wanted to make sure that I was positioned on the side to do the disintermediating and not get disintermediated. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, and I'm not happy to say this, it's uncomfortable, but there's going to be a lot of people who are going to get disintermediated through lots of various technologies that are coming online now and being developed as we speak.
You know, I know that I've personally been, well, Jackie and I both, because we've both gone through some of your classes online and been able to glean so much knowledge just from your own like teaching experience and passion for teaching and like breadth of knowledge in the space. And this is really just such an amazing culmination of like a true gift that you have and that you've developed over your lifetime, and you know, your passion for blockchain and you know, how we're moving forward into the future and solving problems and that sort of thing. So now you're working for this company, the Blockchain Collective. Can you tell us a little about what you're doing with them and what's going on?
Yeah, so I went to a crypto conference here in Brisbane about 2.5 years ago. Matter of fact, October will be 2 years. And obviously met some pretty amazing people and met the guys from Blockchain Collective, and they had produced a training course that was the first accredited training course in the world in the space of blockchain. And what I mean by accredited is it's basically approved by a government body. And the government body here in Australia is called the AQTF, which is like the Australian Quality Training and Standards Board. And, you know, you have to submit your course, and it's like $10,000 fee to submit your course. They were successful in getting the course accredited. And again, I mentioned it was the first accredited blockchain course in the world that's been accredited by a government entity. And, you know, I've been involved with training in various aspects, either working in the training industry or training myself. I taught scuba for 15 years. I worked as an accounting tutor and a math tutor. Of course, again, working in the training industry for years and years. I trained, you know, hundreds of salespeople. And so I've always just been a natural trainer, and being excited about the blockchain and then looking at an opportunity of training blockchain and going back to my thoughts about AOL and where I was back in the early days of the internet, it all just kind of came together, and it was like, wow, perfect opportunity for me. I can do this course. I know I'm pretty good. I did a lot of SEO training as well. So I'm pretty good at taking technical concepts and not dummying them down, but using, you know, natural wording and stories, you know, stories from my life to get through the technical knowledge across without being just a techno geek. And I basically said to them, hey guys, you know, if you'll, you give me access to the content, they were in dire need of a trainer. I said that, you know, I'll get through it as soon as I can. And it's sold as an 18-month course, the advanced diploma. And I was able to get through it in about 9.5 months. It was an insane amount of work. I'm impressed, Jackie, with your MBA. I've never done an MBA. I do have a 4-year degree in banking and finance, but my assumption is that this is probably equivalent to an MBA. I had to produce over 75 pages of documentation because as you go through the course, you have to basically map out a project. So you actually have to either come up with a live project that you want to, or a mock project that you're passionate about, or in the course we have a couple of kind of other mock situations. There's a wine provenance where you can track the from grape to bottle type thing. Anyway, it all worked together, and I ended up being the second person in the world to have completed that qualification. And there's now only 3 of us in the world that can teach this course. Because again, to be able to teach the course in Australia, you also have to have what's called a Certificate for in Training and Assessment, which I got back in 2003, just as part of my career development in Australia. And so, so that's where I'm at. So we have the accredited course, which is the advanced diploma. The guys have done a really good job with lobbying the Australian government as well. So the course has been approved for students who want to come to Australia to actually live here and learn. We have things happening in the world you're not going to be able to sign up for that right now, but in the future you will be. It can be delivered online though, so you don't have to come to Australia. You actually can do the course distance learning via Zoom meetings and all of that stuff. We obviously have a hosted LMS where all the content lives and where you upload all your materials and everything. And by the way, if you're coming to Australia, that you're looking at somewhere between an $18,000 to $22,000 commitment to do something like that, right? It's not a small decision, and it's not a small course. So we decided to also create what we're calling a non-accredited course, and we're calling it a 6-week intensive applied blockchain course. And what we've done is in the advanced diploma, there's 6 what are called core units that you have to complete. And then there's 2 electives that you can choose from. So for the 6-week intensive course, what we've done is we've taken one tiny little piece from each of the core units, and that's what we present on. We talk about building a business model. We talk about non-functional, functional requirements. We talk about network operators. We talk about smart contracts. And then we talk about interoperability. And so we basically have a 1-hour live training session on each of those topics. And then there is some coursework that's provided to you. And if you do want to complete that, you will get a certificate of registration, which basically is, we're going to start trying to create a certification that will be accepted by industry. You'll get a baseline certification. Again, it's hosted online. We've got 2 hours of pre-recorded content, which are kind of the intros. So if you have no blockchain experience whatsoever, we have 2 hours of content that's pre-recorded that you can access at your leisure, and basically walks you through all the introduction, the terminology, the concepts. And then if you do come to the course with that background, you can just skip that and just come straight to the instructor-led session. And we are going to put together a course just for you ladies that you can refer people to. We will put in I'll send you a link, which you guys can put into the description. What that will do is that will bring you to a landing page where you can learn a little bit about the course, talks about some of the industries that need blockchain, talks about some of the areas of skill sets that you might bring to the table. And if you'll just complete that form, you'll put in your name and number and cell phone number, and you'll get an email verified saying you are registered in the system. That will then take you to a course page where you can actually purchase the course. And again, put your credit card details. We are going to give you also a discount code. So you're going to get about 11% off. And we chose 11% because, I want to give you more than 10, right? We want to take this thing all the way up to 11, which is pretty exciting. And then for those people who are interested in possibly doing the diploma or advanced diploma, they would want to engage with you too. And then again, we can put you in touch with the people at the training companies where you would have to go through the process. If you're going to try to come to Australia, obviously there's a whole visa application. That's a whole nother drama and a whole nother thing. But if you did just want to do the course online, you could do that. And then the other thing that's interesting, what they've done is here in Australia, they have a concept called skilled migration. And it means that the government every year produces a list of professional services that there is a shortage of here in Australia. And so if you want to come live and work here, if you have a skill set that maps to that list, you're kind of fast tracked through, right? Because Australia has clearly said we need these people with this skill set. Well, we got approved by the government that this course would prepare you to be a blockchain consultant. And the wording actually says if you want to apply to come here as a skilled migrant, you would be expected to have the Advanced Diploma of Applied Blockchain as a qualification to prove that skill set. So there's lots of ways, again, if you want to come to Australia, there's several ways to get here. But if you just want to get the knowledge yourself, again, we can help you with that. And the other thing I want to give a brief around is, what is this course teaching you? We're not teaching you how to code blockchain. We're not teaching you how to day trade cryptos. What we're teaching is how can someone become a consultant in this industry and act as kind of a middle person. You're the translator between the stakeholders with the companies that want to implement a blockchain solution and then the developers that are the tech geeks. So you're kind of walking down that middle ground. Now, as a consulting company in this space, guess what? You're going to need business people. You're going to need managers. You're going to need marketing people. So whatever skill set you have up your sleeve that you've spent the last 10 or 15 years doing, you potentially could bring that skill set into a blockchain company or a blockchain solution, because blockchain consultants, just like every other consultant, have those requirements, right? We still need, again, people to market us. We still need people to do the operations. We still need people to recruit, blah, blah, blah. So, almost any skill set can be applied into the blockchain world. It's just a matter of figuring out how you plug in.
And it's going to be so needed isn't it like blockchain experience is the number one thing that's being searched on right now on LinkedIn for job experience and knowledge?
Certainly. Well, I'd say if you look at the who's who in the zoo right now, there's probably, my guess would be 70%, and this is me just guessing, I have no statistical reference around this, but my guess would be 70% would be developers. So they'd be people who do code. And because it's so early days, that's what's needed right now. It goes back to my AOL days, right? Like most of those freaks that were there were like super techno-minded people. I mean, really out there, way ahead of their time. And so those developers are in place now. But what's coming in behind now is all the business stuff, right? So all these ICOs are trying to create businesses, and so again, just like I said, businesses need people. We just need people that can talk the blockchain talk and understand how to strategize and have a cursory, at least a cursory understanding of the jargon. And you're going to get more than a cursory education of the jargon by going through even the 6-week course. We call it an intensive course. For a reason. I actually got some feedback from the course I did just recently that there was a lot of me talking and not a lot of two-way. And the problem is the course is only an hour live session, and I purposefully have built in more information than probably can be delivered in an hour. So if I got any complaints from the course, I wanted the complaints to be, you're trying to cover way too much in too little time, then, wow, I don't think I got value from this because you didn't really cover enough.
And just to speak to that, I mean, like I said, when I was learning about blockchain, I probably got involved early 2016. And, you can go out there, you can look it up on YouTube, you can do internet searches. And I mean, anybody that's like quasi in the space can try to explain it, whatever, but it's a big subject. It's a very robust field. And I was so lucky to sit in on some of these slides when you were developing them. And I mean, I was blown away. I was like, man, this is something I could sit with for a while and really figure out. I mean, I think you mentioned before, it's like a third of the workforce over the next 10 years that's going to be affected by this. And when you really see it through the course, it's like you can really find places, whatever you do in industry right now, like there's going to be a need, just the way people use the internet, the way they never thought they were going to be, 30 or 40 years ago. It's just going to be sort of a part of our jobs, just to incorporate it in businesses, just in the bones, in my feeling.
Well, you're right about, there's a lot of content on YouTube, and, I use YouTube. I mean, I'm a big fan of YouTube. I consume a lot of the content there. The problem that you have is that it's piecemeal, and it's oftentimes like super laser targeted. Like it's talking about one specific project or one specific protocol or one specific platform, or it's the exact opposite. It's super high level. And, it's basically geared towards, research fellows, right? And then the other problem you have, and I'm not trying to get on my high horse here, but I find a lot of people that have a technical background are very difficult to watch. And it's hard to stay engaged, So I think I do a pretty good job of engaging my students. And then obviously we put a lot of thought into the flow of the topics and the flow of the content. And again, there's very few, if any, YouTube videos that are teaching people how to be consultants. They're either teaching you how to cut code, or they're teaching you how to trade crypto, or they're talking about what they've done. But there's no one like teaching you how to get from here to there. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where this course sits.
And I think of like all my old friends from the newspaper that were in like IS or IT, and it's not that you can't understand it. I mean, it's a lot to understand, but if you have that kind of processing mind to begin with, it's really just the next iteration of what we already know.
Absolutely. If you come from an IT background or specifically a software programming background, you're going to have a really easy time getting through some of it. You may not have, like, software developers aren't always, people. And, as a consultant, you're going to have to engage, with a lot of different people. But there'll be certain parts of the course that, like, I struggled with because I didn't come from a software development background, but ultimately blockchain is software. So, once you get your head around that, it's like, oh, okay, it's just a different way of basically making the software work and a different way of securing data, really, ultimately.
I really feel like even in the 6-week course, it's just kind of the rules to the game. It's like, here they are, it's the meat and potatoes of what's going on and what's coming.
Well, it certainly covers the meat and potatoes of what a blockchain development project would look like. And the information that you need to have as a consultant to manage that.
Well, I think it's really exciting to just have this conversation, be in a place where we can all just come together and just give this information to so many people, because people are looking for explanations in a way that they can understand and really assimilate, and just wanting to be a part of the forward thinkers, the outside of the box problem solvers, like want to be in on not only in on the conversation, but be a part of the next wave that's coming and not miss out. I think the more ways you can get involved, as far as like, yes, go ahead and invest your money, go ahead and be part of these conversations around a dining room table. But if you have any of these skill sets, or if you think that you may be in a position that you're someone, either yourself or someone that you love, may be replaced by this sort of technology that's coming, then it may be worth just checking it out and seeing how you may be able to fit into the overall puzzle.
Well, I got two points on that, which is, one of them's quite funny. So when I got near the end of my first unit, again, as you go through the advanced diploma, you actually have to have a Zoom call and present your topic to the trainer as like, you're mocking a presentation to a stakeholder. And there's, certain things that the trainer has to mark off, that you again, tell a story, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the call, this is my first live session with the trainer, and the trainer's in his mid-60s. He's Australian, but he lives in Vanuatu. This guy comes from a software development background. He had his own software development company and worked for big logistics companies in the alcohol space, right? As in like drinking. Like, so he was all over the supply chains for wine and liquor and all that stuff here in Australia throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. At the end of the first session, I said, so what cryptos are you into? And he goes, I don't follow any of that crap. I don't buy those things. Are you kidding? I wouldn't invest in that if I had to. And I was like, what? Here you have a guy who's teaching people blockchain, and he absolutely doesn't believe in the projects enough to actually go put any money there. And so, oh, by the way, I've got over 50 projects I've got money into. So I'm also trying to stay across what's happening in that space. And I think that's something that another aspect that I bring to the course, where I am kind of keeping up with what's happening on an almost daily, semi-daily basis with the crypto space. Certainly I follow some projects more closely than others. The other point that I was going to make is that in this day, and I don't necessarily want to timestamp this video, but there's a lot of people, specifically in the US, well, even in Australia, that are completely locked down right now. What better thing to do with your time than learn something that's going to help you really become someone when all this changes and we move into this wave and we move out of the lockdown and into the wave of blockchain. And it's not going to stop. It's not slowing down. The momentum's building every day. There's new projects happening every day and existing projects that are going live every day, and it's just a crazy space. So the one thing I can say is, that in the blockchain world, the virus has not stopped blockchain. Matter of fact, just this Saturday, there's a project that was developed right here in Brisbane called Beef Ledger, and basically it's monitoring cows from birth to fork. What paddock what farm did it come from? What were the processes? What abattoir? What did the cow eat grass? Like if it's grass fed, did it really eat grass? and it's called Beef Ledger, and they're having a barbecue this Saturday at a big park here, and they're launching. It's kind of their launch, and you can buy the Beef Ledger tokens, and you can buy beef, and you can scan the beef on the package and see the whole process. And so, I mean, there you go. There's a live project that's been in development for 3 years, and they're launching this weekend at a park here in Brisbane. So that stuff's happening all over the world. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for you to get involved.
Yes. Well, finally, you've manifested into our reality, and we're involved now.
So yeah, Curtis was telling me all about Bitcoin for about 6 months. I mean, he was just like, oh, Bitcoin and investing in cryptocurrency and blockchain. And I was just like, what? Like, it was just one of those things I just like gloss over. I mean, the fact that I couldn't understand it meant in my mind that I just couldn't go there in the conversation. And I just did not have the bandwidth I was like, what? No. And I just was, and I've seen that in friends that I talk to now all the time. They're just like, wait, what is crypto? Is that Bitcoin? And they're like, oh no, I don't know anything about that. Like, we're not going there. And so it took me a long time to come around. It was about 6 months easily. And Curtis just kept getting more and more excited. He's making money, like lots of money, like even like daily hundreds, 200, 300% or more returns. And I'm like, okay. So on Christmas Eve, we like sat down, he explained like the whole structure of everything. I had like pages and pages and pages of notes. And, I came out and I was like, all right, it was 2017. I bought Bitcoin at the top of the market. And, and now I'm just leveraging it. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. I also bought whenever it was 3,300. I bought as much as I could possibly afford, because I was like, it's not going to be at 3,300 anytime soon again. So, it is a wild, crazy ride as far as the investment part goes, but you just have to have some skin in the game to be able to be part of the conversation. And you can see, how you like it and how much fun it is. And I've found just to be able to have some skin in the game, have conversations and educate myself more, I've just become more and more and more passionate about the big picture of what I see, learning about some small companies and how it's really going to completely revolutionize business in the future as we know it today. It's not going to look at all what it's going to look like in 10 years. And I'm just really excited to kind of see everything unfold. And I have my dear big brother to thank for introducing me early enough where we're actually going to be laughing in 10 years.
We recently had this experience with someone we were speaking to, on a meeting. And I think it's important to understand and to outline that, the concept of investing in cryptos and Bitcoin is one thing, but learning how to apply blockchain technology to a business setting is a completely different thing. And that's what we cover in the courses. It really is going, sure, having the investment experience is good because, again, you got the passion and you're excited, but that's not what we cover in the course. And just a last story about that. I was first exposed to the concept of Bitcoin in 2013 on a fishing trip. We had a 5-hour drive up to where we were going fishing. And one of the many stories that I was told was a friend of mine was using his video card to mine this thing called Bitcoin. So I shouldn't even be sitting in front of you right now, because back then Bitcoin was $600. And had I gotten off my ass and gone to learn about it, again, I'd be retired in Thailand right now. But what he was doing with the Bitcoin was a bit dodgy. He was going to Silk Road and buying stuff and having it delivered to his house. So I immediately tied the two together, and I told him, I was like, man, you're going to jail. Like, that's just dangerous. And no. So again, unfortunately for me, I tied the two things together. And again, had I taken the time to learn about what Bitcoin was back in 2013, again, I wouldn't be sitting here now. I'd be retired on some beach somewhere. So it is what it is, right? And we all get into whatever we're getting into at the right time. Maybe the universe wasn't ready for me to get rich then, but I'm in the process of going down that path now. So again, I'll drag you two screaming down the road with me.
You needed to teach the next generation. You couldn't get rich too soon.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we didn't even get into this, but I mean, even what you were talking about, Rachel, like just with the cryptos and that and following projects, I mean, and really just getting into like peer-to-peer technology, and there's people freaking out about going into a cashless society right now. And if you really understand how blockchain works and how some of the cryptos do work, I mean, it's more powerful than what we have right now, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it makes it completely decentralized. Government's not involved, and it gives more power and transparency to the people. It's going to be a really, really, really good thing.
Well, that's again why I like going down this path, because, yeah, to be honest, the U.S. government or the world, let's say the G20, next time at their meeting, they decide to outlaw Bitcoin, right? So they make it illegal to use Bitcoin or own Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin will never be destroyed because it's, again, decentralized, millions of nodes around the world, blah, blah, blah. But if they stop your ability to spend it, that's not what we're teaching in this course. What we're teaching in this course, again, is how to use blockchain in the real world. No one's ever going to make blockchain illegal, but they might try to make some of the currencies illegal because they're going to want to maintain control. But if you learn how to use blockchain as a business solution, you still can ride that wave and still be part of this coming wave, and make sure that, again, you're doing the disintermediating and not getting disintermediated. So I think it's an important point to make.
Well, I could literally listen to you talk all day. It's exciting that Curtis is hopefully going to bestow us and be on our show more times.
Many more times. We have blood in the game.
I look forward to it.
We'll go full consciousness soon. Or should I say full sentience?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, thank you so much for your time, ladies. This has been awesome. I look forward to catching up again.
And Curtis Chappell from Blockchain Collective. Thank you so much again, Curtis. Amazing. Thank you to Curtis so much for stopping on the show. And just for anyone out there, honestly, this is an amazing opportunity. You got to sit in on some of these, and it's really just phenomenal. I've been in the blockchain space. It's not incredibly easy to get comprehensive and a holistic overview of really what's coming. And this is so fantastic. And it's $18.97 Australian. You're going to get $200 off with our code. And once you convert that to USD, you're only going to pay about $1,200 for this course. I don't even want to admit to the amounts of money I've paid for other courses that are just absolutely can't even touch the caliber of information that Curtis is teaching and with Blockchain Collective.
Yes, Jackie and I have done the videos in the 6-week intensive course, and it really is amazing. So much information. And the link to register for the course is in the description, along with our discount code to give you the $200 off, Alpha with a capital A. 200 is in the description. And of course, comment below, like, subscribe. We'd love to hear your feedback and questions and comments. You can always reach out to us on the alphadrop@gmail.com. And until next time, see you soon.
See you guys. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.